Hey, it's Molly. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. As I wanted to dive into a topic that I think is really important for conscious parenting, and that is how valuable your child's astrology chart is in understanding who they are, understanding their energy, their needs, their emotional world, how they think, how they're here to be themselves in the world, and how their astrology chart is going to show you so much of that and give you really important insights, especially when your child is moving through a difficult time. Now, of course, there's so many different experiences and events in our lives that unfold, and when we're younger, we are at a very different level of understanding. We don't have choices. We don't have tools or a level of consciousness in how to deal with things. There's a lot of times when people say children are resilient, children are strong, children will figure it out. Children have limited tools and choices, and they don't often have control over their environment. They're in survival. They're depending on their parents or their caretakers for their needs, for what they can do. And what happens is that when a child is moving through something that is potentially very intense, challenging, hard, maybe it's traumatic, maybe it's just something that's too much for their energy system. What happens is that 10, 20, 30 years later, they're in therapy realizing that was trauma. That was so difficult for me. I felt so much happening. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't think I had choices. And that's often the case. I mean, you can probably think back to your own childhood and what you went through, what you experienced, that you can still remember to this day, that perhaps formed some core memories in your life about your world, about your family, about school, about sports, about your siblings, all the above and more. And how when we know our child's energy, we know how to address these things within them that they don't know how to express yet, that they don't even understand within themselves, but their astrology chart shows you. It tells you what they're receiving, how they're feeling inside, which is their moon sign, what they need to feel emotionally safe and secure, what they need at the end of the day or during the day to feel connected. That's their moon. Their Mercury is how they're thinking, taking in information, how they learn, what they're processing. Their Mercury is going to tell you how they approach learning or language, how they approach school, how they're thinking about things in the world at large. Their Mercury tells you how they take in information. Their Venus is going to show you what they need to feel confident, to feel loved. Perhaps you're getting insight into their love language, into what they need that makes them feel happy or good about themselves, about something that brings them joy, whether that's a hobby or a passion or something that they want to do. That can be their Venus. Their Mars is how they assert themselves, their energy level, how they express anger or not, the parts of themselves that maybe they go after what they want. A child with a strong Mars is going to have a lot of energy, a lot more energy, especially if that Mars is robust and dominant in their chart. And that's going to explain some things about them, why they don't want to sit at a desk all day, for example, why they need a lot of sports, a lot of activity. That's going to be their Mars. And then we also have their Sun, of course, which is their sense of self, what they're learning about themselves in this lifetime, how they're growing, how they're developing, how they're here to be confident. And the Sun, being the brightest luminary in our solar system, is how they're here to shine. Knowing all of this can support you in consciously parenting your child and getting to the heart of their needs, what they're experiencing and what they're feeling. And again, in a way that they can't articulate yet, because children are in survival mode at a very unconscious level, meaning they do what they have to do to get through something, or to be in an environment, or to deal with something in the family or at school. But when you can see who they are in their astrology chart, there's more you're going to tap into and get to the heart of right away. And this is where you can address their needs almost instantly. And think about how that plays out over time. When a child is raised in an environment that knows their energy, that knows their needs, and they feel safe, they feel seen, they feel heard, because here you have a conscious parent who's aware of their energy and how to deal with it. Now, this becomes complicated when you have multiple children, because you're going to have then multiple children with different energies, different needs. And you can look at this in your family as like, well, when I give the chore list to the children, one of them always does the chores right away. That's maybe his Mars, right? Or his sun sign. And then the other two, they could care less. They never do anything with it. It's like they're not even listening. So when you understand their different astrology charts, it's going to help connect the dots on how each child, each energy vessel is their own unique being, and why some things land and why some things don't. You can look at their Mercury for how they learn, how they understand. My son has Mercury in Virgo. And ever since he was young, I have always given him 1, 2, 3. We're going to first put on your socks, then your shoes, then this. Because that Mercury in Virgo wants a process. So I speak to his process. And I see it in him. I see it in his learning style. I see it in how he takes in things, how he needs to understand. He needs to understand it through that Mercury in Virgo lens. This is very different than if you're speaking to a child who has Mercury in Aries, Mercury in Pisces, Mercury in any other sign. This also tells you what they need at school, how they're going to learn, how they're going to take in information, how they're going to understand it. The Mercury in Virgo, he can be overwhelmed. When he brings a school project home that we have to work on, I always break it down into simple steps for him because he can feel overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. This helps ground it for him. So when you understand your child's Mercury, you're going to know how to talk to them in a way that lands, that they get it, right? That they're understanding it. And again, when you have multiple children, this is where it becomes very different. Where you could even be like the one child who always listens to me and the other child who doesn't seem to understand what I'm saying. It's probably the Mercury. Now we can get more complicated and bring in their third house, which is the house of language, learning, studying, information. That can provide more insights into what they take in and how they digest it, as well as their early education learning experiences. So understanding your child's chart is really important for not only how you parent, but raising a beautiful, energetic being who's going to be more confident in the world, who's going to understand that they're really seen and that there's someone who sees them in a way that supports them. And think about what this changes at a generational level. Because I would bet so many of us, we didn't have that, right? If you were lucky, maybe you were raised with a parent who really knew your energy. Maybe they used astrology, right? Maybe other ways they knew your energy and they were able to understand you at a primal base level. Most of us didn't have that. And so when we approach parenting with the support of astrology, we hone in on specifics that get to the heart of who someone is. And then again, it changes how that child then moves into the world, enters the world, what they feel they can do in the world, and also how that changes things for generations to come. So this can have a very fascinating, long-lasting approach if you're willing to understand who your child is, their needs, what they're about, what they want, and how you can tune into that, how you can provide that for them. Yes, you can have readings on your child and then look at how they're showing up. It's important to note that depending on their age, of course, there's a big growth process that happens. And one of the big ones I would say right off the bat would be related to transiting Saturn. So transiting Saturn is the energy of maturity and growth. And it basically operates in these 7-year spans of time. So from 0 to 7 years of age is an important time for the child to grow, obviously. And then at 7 years of age, there's typically something that happens with Saturn energy about maturity, and something that comes up that shifts the child's growth in a way that changes their world. And this can be something where they start to do something new in the world. They take on more responsibility. Maybe at 7, they have their first chores. Or there's something that changes in their home or with their dad. I mean, there's so many ways this can happen that I can't possibly discuss all of them because it's specific to each of us. But if you're looking at this in terms of the 7-year cycles, that would be Saturn, transiting Saturn, maturing them. And then you have the Saturn opposition at 14. Maybe that's a first job. Maybe that's doing something in a new way in the world, new responsibility. Again, something with home life or father energy or something significant. So what you're looking at here is your child's energy, what they're here to learn, how they're here to grow, what you can do to be aware of that, how you can support them, work with it, and again, hone in on their needs. So let's say your child has a really bad day at school. You'd want to talk to their moon, which is their emotional energy, where they go when they're having a bad day. It can be, that moon sign is looking for comfort, security, something to support them. You could also look at their Venus, which is maybe something that turns the energy around, that makes them feel loved, that lifts their spirits, that gives them something good to focus on. And when you know this and you work with it, it's going to help you understand not only who your child is, but again, fulfill their needs and help them know that they're loved and supported by you because you're seeing them. You're truly seeing them. That Mars sign, again, that can be their physical energy, what they want to do, what they need to do. Some kids, some people, you have a more, I would say, passive Mars or quieter Mars. And maybe you're not as actively involved in sports or you don't want to do physical activity. But that Mars needs to move, it needs to exert itself. So you can look at, well, what does my child want to do that relates to their Mars, that would be healthy and supportive for them? So many ways to look at this, but I feel like it's really important for conscious parenting to know your child and your children, to understand how they're different as well when you have multiple kids. And how there's multiple needs. And, one child's bad day is going to feel better with certain remedies, while another child's bad day might need something totally different. And this will explain it too. This will explain, why kids are the way they are or what you're experiencing with them and how. Now, this does become more dynamic and more complicated, of course, the deeper you go into the chart. And even when you are looking at your astrology chart in regards to your child's and what comes up there. Because when there's conjunctions between your child's chart and your chart, that's where you're on the same page. That's where they're going to understand something, or there can be more harmony. Depends on the planets involved. But that can also explain if there's oppositions and if there's squares, right? Because those squares are tension or challenges. But if you see them, if you're aware of it, then you're going to get it. So if there is, say, their Mars squares your Mercury, and you've got a lot of disagreements or a lot of things that you don't get between each other, and I'm thinking about as kids get older, right? And they're teenagers and young adults and how they express themselves. Like, if you're aware of that Mercury squaring Mars between the two of you, then you're going to have the ability to approach things differently so they can hear it better, so it doesn't start a fight. These are things that can be really good to know. And of course, as a parent, we just feel more responsibility, right? We feel, you want to do your best, give them what they need, but life happens. And in fact, one of my parenting philosophies is that the world will be hard enough. The world, his life experiences, what he goes through, it will be hard enough at times, but he will always be safe with me. He will always be safe to be himself with me. I will know who he is. I will do my best. I will not be perfect. I will not get it right every time. But if I understand who he is, then that will provide that safe harbor, that place to go at the end of a bad day, that place where he can be himself and get recharged to then go back out into the world and be himself in the world. So I feel like this is one of the beautiful gifts of astrology, is how we can know our children, understand their energy, do what's best for them, provide for them energetically, nurture and take care of them energetically, and how that sets them up for potentially a more successful life, more confidence in themselves, more of a sense of really understanding who they are and what they're about, and where they can go from there. So, hope this has given you some good things to think about in regards to your own child or children, how you can know them through this world of astrology. And if you're asking me, where can I get their chart done? You can get free astrology charts on a variety of websites and apps. I often recommend astro.com. I believe on astro.com, I'm remembering now, the child had to be at least 5 or 6 in order for their information to create a chart. So you might have to try a different website if your child's under 5. But if they're 5 or older, you should be able to get a free chart. And they might have changed that by now. I just remember trying that at some point, and I was surprised that they had that age limit on it. But you can find it on other free apps or free websites. Just put in their birth details and go from there. The journey gets pretty wild when you start looking at their astrology chart and understanding more of who they are, what they need, what they're about, and how their energy is here to experience itself in this lifetime. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope this has been useful, some good things to think about, and I'll be back with another video soon. Be sure and check out my playlist here on YouTube, as I have so many topics I've already covered that I hope also help you in expanding your own astrological knowledge. I'll see you back here soon.